This week on Quality Digest Live, we examine the good and bad of Six Sigma.
Plus, navigating the roadmap to a culture of excellence. Or that would be excellence.
Excellent.
Excellence. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for December 12th, 2014. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest editor-in-chief, Dirk Ducharme. You know how they don't feed you anything on airplane flights anymore? At least on the ones that we fly.
Peanuts?
Peanuts. Well, I mean, when we fly, we take like the cheapest route possible. So it's like 6 stops between Sacramento and Chicago.
So 6 stops between Sacramento and Los Angeles. What are you talking about?
You get 8 bags of peanuts.
And you know, they count the number of peanuts in those bags.
Hey, I'm believing you. Well, believe it or not, this is actually going to get worse. This food situation is going to get worse. Boeing has completed the world's first flight using green diesel. And for those of you who aren't from our tree-hugging state of California, green diesel is a biofuel, and it's widely available and used in ground transportation. It's made from stuff like used vegetable oil, waste cooking oil, French fries, waste animal fat, bacon. And if you've ever been around a car that's driving that stuff, it's like driving behind a McDonald's. So imagine now, you're going to be in a plane, instead of smelling diesel fuel, you're going to be sitting there starving, and you're going to be sitting smelling bacon and French fries.
Followed by seagulls. Mine.
This is actually an interesting story. Boeing has powered its Eco Demonstrator 787 flight test airplane with a blend of 15% green diesel, bacon, and 85% petroleum jet fuel in the left engine. Now, this is only just on a test aircraft right now. It hasn't been approved for commercial flights yet. But with a production capacity of about 800 million gallons in the United States, Europe, and Asia, green diesel could rapidly supply as much as 1% of global jet fuel demand, and that's a whole lot of fuel. So at a wholesale cost of about $3 per gallon, including in the United States government incentives, green diesel is about the same price as petroleum jet fuel, so it might make sense to use. On a life cycle basis, sustainably produced green diesel reduces carbon emissions by 50 to 90% compared to fossil fuel, according to Finland-based Neste Oil, which supplied green diesel for the Eco Demonstrator 787. So this is, we're starting to see alternative fuels have been for a long time, obviously, in automobiles, but now they're starting to test it now, at least biodiesel in aircraft, so or in commercial aircraft. So that. Kind of interesting.
Well, it's good stuff.
It's still going to smell like bacon.
It's still bacon and French fries. But sustainability means so many things to so many different people. But one thing that sustainability often it gets lost within sustainability is the cost to transport stuff. You could have stuff that's organic, let's say food, but if it needs to be flown from Peru to a supermarket in California, it may be organic, but it's not sustainable. So things like this help to maybe reinforce sustainability within the food supply and supply chain.
Right, and that's the point. I think part of the point they were making too is that this fuel supply is being produced in Europe, United States, and what was the other place there? Anyway, so it is something that the costs, even considering all the costs of manufacture and transport and so forth, it's going to be on a par with regular petroleum-based fuel. So
good stuff there.
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, turning now to another story. If there's one thing that pretty much everyone is interested in, it's our respective paychecks, and of course, everyone else's paychecks too. Hey, we're all interested in that, right?
Right?
So it's no surprise that when the ASQ recently published the annual salary survey, there was, as always, a great deal of curiosity about the results. Nearly 7,000 quality professionals responded to the survey, and the headline number shows that there wasn't much change actually from 2013 to 2014. The average salary for quality professionals responding to the survey last year was $88,606.
What?
This year,
we're in the wrong job.
We are in that job. This year, there was a very slight decline to $88,423.
I'll take that as well.
A decrease of a whole $200, Dirk. But essentially, as you can see there, $88,000. The salaries essentially were flat from 2013 to 2014. As in the past, this year's ASQ survey got beyond the numbers a little bit to reveal some broad trends about what makes quality professionals value their careers and in turn have their organizations value them. First, Culture is important. It's no surprise that those working for organizations that appreciate the importance of quality tended to pay more. These organizations demonstrate their support for that culture by doing things such as embracing a quality system or methodology and/or paying for employee training. And of course, with training usually comes what? Certification, right?
Right.
The survey revealed, again, not surprisingly, that those who became certified quality engineers, Six Sigma black belts, or achieved similar achievements earned much more than their non-certified peers, in some cases 20 to 30 or 40% more. Big difference
It's a
in
big
many
difference,
cases
yeah.
in terms of getting certified to some of these things. Finally, experience counts, not a surprise again. In the United States, those with more than 20 years of experience earned well in excess of $100,000 on average, while those with a year or less took home about $62,000. No surprise there. If you've been working in the field longer, you're going to make more money, right? The survey uncovered one eternal truth, and that's that there's more to a career than money. In fact, despite the slight decrease in average salary from 2013 to 2014, most respondents were satisfied with their careers in general and their compensation in particular. And that makes sense. You know, the things that make you want to be a quality professional, the chance to impact your company, you know, feel good about what you're doing, a lot of those things are really valuable, and people talked about that, rather than necessarily just what they're making and saying whether they're happy or not. And some of the side, what we may consider side issues, you know, the culture of the company, do they support your growth, do they want to see you improve and do different things, really had a lot to do with satisfaction rather than just what that paycheck, but the paycheck matters, but I mean, what the bottom line is less important maybe than some of these other factors.
Right, we also know that education also impacts salary. Sure. ASQ has shown that in the past, our own salary surveys that we've done in the past, other industry surveys have shown that also the higher level of education that you have, also the more likely you are to make a better salary as well. So
yeah,
those things are important.
That's right. Okay, well, to learn more about the ASQ salary survey, check out the story link just below this video player screen, right down there. As always, links to all the news items and articles that Dirk and I are covering on today's show are available right down there.
All right. Well, another article this week that got a lot of attention was Is Six Sigma Dead? By Rip Stauffer. Rip is somebody who's written for us quite a bit in the past. Who's written for us quite a bit in the past. And he's starting to write again for us some columns recently. So Six Sigma, for whatever reason, and probably many reasons, is probably one of the most maligned quality improvement, continuous improvement programs ever. And yet, 30 or so years later, it remains. Very few people talk about quality circles anymore or TQM, even though both of those programs still exist, particularly outside the United States. Six Sigma is still a program or process or methodology, whatever you want to call it, that is still in use and still on the lips of most quality professionals. The thing with Six Sigma and a lot of programs, and maybe why it is still around, is that Six Sigma in particular has either morphed into something else. We know that is true. We've seen Six Sigma change considerably in terms of its understanding of it, how it's used. We know that it's changed a lot. Six Sigma has changed a lot over the years, and in some cases, Six Sigma has simply been called something else. I mean, a company may be using what other people might call Six Sigma, they call it something else, and it's been folded into other quality initiatives. And in fact, we did an interview with Michael Harry, I think it was about 10 years ago. Harry is one of the founders of Six Sigma, and he told us this very thing in an interview we did with him, that Six Sigma in many cases is just called something else, it's folded into something else. Another thing that happens is a lot of people, because many times there's a negative connotation to having implemented Six Sigma, they won't call it Six Sigma. They'll just simply call the program something else. Regarding the latter, the question Stauffer examines is, why has Six Sigma in many cases gone underground? Why kind of this negative association? And it refers to an old Minitab survey on Six Sigma about, I think it was back in 2009, where Minitab did a survey of 200 Six Sigma black belts and higher from a variety of companies. The survey asked the following question: based on your experience, what are the top 5 reasons Six Sigma projects fail? That is, they do not meet objectives. And you probably know the answer to this as well, because it doesn't matter whether it's Six Sigma or anything else. Here's the top 5 reasons. Number 1, lack of management support. Number 2, not linked to finances. Important also. 3, solution not implemented. No data, bad data. And 5, the project scope was too large. Okay, Stauffer then goes on to give 2 case studies, 2 different companies that he worked with himself, or that he was a consultant with. One did exactly what those 5 points laid out, and the other did the opposite. The results were about what you would imagine. In the first company, management couldn't be bothered with attending meetings or offering other support, critical support, in other ways to the Six Sigma projects. And of course, at the end of 2 years, management pointed fingers when not much had been accomplished, even though they hadn't been actively involved.
Right.
In the other company, the CEO himself championed Six Sigma and led the executive session. His COO also, rather forcefully, required black belt candidates and project sponsors to make their Six Sigma projects priorities. And in fact, he even gives an example of somebody who kind of, well, I didn't have time to, to prepare for this meeting, and was basically called on the carpet in front of everybody. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, if this is going to be your project, you said you were going to make it a priority. Why didn't you make it a priority? You are going to make this a priority.
That's right.
So basically, management really making it an issue and making it a priority for everybody that these Six Sigma projects were going to be worked on. So the result was, for that company, in their first wave of projects, that company saw about $32 million in benefits, and they continued to see substantial bottom line benefits in their further projects. The point Stauffer makes is that no initiative of any kind is going to get anywhere without support. We all know this. Now, most likely, because of the title of this article, Is Six Sigma Dead?, we had a bunch of people jump on to comment about Six Sigma, both good and bad. But many also had experienced exactly what Stauffer was talking about. And the comments are worth reading. There's really some thoughtful comments in there. But as Stauffer says, you can really take this article, substitute the word Six Sigma with anything else, your quality program du jour, and come away from this article with the same message. The reason any initiative will die or flourish is really dependent on 2 things, in my opinion. Is there intrinsic value in the methodology? In other words, does the methodology make sense? And, of course, is it being supported by management? I wanted to point out one really interesting comment we had on this article because, to me, it really summed up the whole thing. This one came from Beverly Daniels, and it really addressed a lot of the complaints about Six Sigma. And Beverly, I'm editing your comment a bit, so forgive me, but this really is good, and this is kind of an annotated version of what Beverly Daniels said. Here's what she said. Has the name Six Sigma been used by hack consultants whose sole purpose was to get rich while defiling real quality methods and tools? Yes, but so what? Did some companies use it and lean to put lipstick on their pigs before trotting them off to the market? Yes, but companies have been doing this since the dawn of time with some brand of lipstick or another. Did the goofy hocus pocus gimmicks, CPK, 1.5 sigma shift, etc., get in the way of some deployments? Yes, and there will always be goofy things because marketers need gimmicks and lazy people want a pill that will cure their ills today. These people will never go away, so we need to stop lamenting their existence and be the best quality professionals we can be. At its heart, says Daniels, and in its origins, Six Sigma is and was nothing more than a packaging of quality methods and tools for those companies that took quality seriously. It has been very successful and continues to be. Companies that care about quality will continue to invest in it, and companies that don't will continue to look for the miracle pill. Good stuff. Very good stuff from Beverly. I really go back. There's a jillion comments on this particular, or go back and read them because I think there's going to be a lot there for everybody just in the comments. Yeah. I would also add that regardless of the tools you embrace, like Beverly says, if you're doing it seriously and you're looking at the tools critically for faults as well as usefulness, you're going to come out ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's very true. And I think that idea that doesn't matter what the methodology is really important because ultimately it's about making sure that it fits your company's culture, right, and that it's supported. And we always talk about management support, but it really needs to be supported by everybody. It starts with management, but
right,
but you also need to rally the troops and make sure that they understand it too. And a lot of these gimmicks that Beverly talks about there are kind of obfuscated sometimes. That's really one of the complaints is that, right, some of these things, CPK, 1.5 sigma shift, takes it in a statistical place where the rank and file don't get it as well. And maybe right, that stuff needs to be put to the side a little bit. I mean, it needs to underpin.
Or it's hocus pocus. I mean, this is also the thing of recognizing, and this is where particularly, talking Six Sigma in particular, a lot of people have, complained. One of our real popular authors, Anthony Burns, is a very, very critical of Six Sigma because specifically his bugaboo is the 1.5 Sigma shift, which a lot of people have basically thrown out at this point. They realize that its basis was pretty weak. Anthony Burns calls it something even worse than being weak. But I mean, the thing is you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. With any methodology, there's going to be weaknesses. If you're taking quality seriously, and this is Beverly's point and Rich Stoffer's point, if you're taking quality seriously, you're going to look at where is the good in this and how can I apply it to improve what I'm doing within my business. If you take it seriously, that's what you're going to do. If you're just interested in putting lipstick on a pig, then it doesn't matter.
Good. Excellent point. Excellent point there by Rip and Beverly. Thanks for that great comment too. All right, well, I talked about the ASQ, Dirk, as you may recall, earlier in the show. I talked about the ASQ salary survey.
$88,000.
$88,000, that's right, that's right. Someday.
More than all of us make together. Just kidding.
Just kidding, JK. Well, the ASQ, of course, presents a lot of surveys, reports, and white papers of this nature, looking at the quality profession from various angles and viewpoints. Of course, many of you will recall the ASQ and Forbes recently released an in-depth white paper called Culture of Quality, Accelerating Growth and Performance in the Enterprise.
Good paper, by the way.
It was a very good paper, very long, good paper, good overview. The white paper provided some really good insight and food for thought on the connection that great companies make in first establishing an enterprise-wide approach to quality and then using those approaches to deliver superior products to customers. We covered the white paper at some length on this program back on August 29th. Maybe you may have remembered that show. This week, on Tuesday and Wednesday, we ran a two-part article written by Robin Lawton that further explored the topic. Lawton's articles are intended to, in his words, quote, highlight what answers were contained in the report and add essential specifics that can provide the rest of the story. Primarily what Lawton does here is he teases out the meaning and implication of three strategic actions that leaders report from the white paper as imperative to creating quality outcomes. First is the need for the organization and the individuals within it to properly define the strategic elements necessary to develop a quality culture. Second, the organization must gather customer feedback and understand customer expectations. Finally, leaders must take that information and synthesize it into an enterprise-wide language and actions as well as deployments. In other words, a culture of quality that everyone understands. Makes sense. Now, as much as that may make sense, it's easier said than done, I think. And the report is long on leaders professing to the importance of these actions and in some cases pointing out to their successes. What it's short on are the specifics about how those organizations achieve these positive results and how others can emulate them. Not a lot of benchmarking opportunities there. You kind of found out what they did, but not so much how they did it. This is really where Lawton rolls up his sleeves and gets down to business. Now, remember, this is a pretty long two-part article. It exceeds 4,000 words in total, so there's plenty of depth here for us to dive into. However, I won't spend the rest of this show, and most of next week's show too, going through Lawton's details point by point. You can and should, I think, read the article itself for that. I would, though, however, with your permission, Dirk, like to spend a minute or two giving you the flavor of one of these three actions, however, as presented by Lawton. The point I want to focus on here is the first one regarding strategy, I think, because it's a good place to start, and I think that it's really interesting how he dealt with this. As his entree into this portion of his argument, Lawton quotes from one of the white paper respondents, again from the ASQ Forbes white paper, Ken Sheed, who's the vice president of integrated quality at Boeing Defense, Space, and Security. Sheed states that a culture of quality requires and ensures that all employees, 1, know their product or deliverable, 2, know their customer, 3, know their customers' quality expectations, and 4th and finally, have the metric or metrics to measure that quality.
In other words, the employees themselves really understand what the company is doing.
What the company is doing and why and what that work is all about. So that's really important. Of course, as Lawton mentions, many will hear that list and think, well, duh, of course, right? All this is pretty obvious. But the devil, as always, is in the details. How do you, as a manager, know that your team really understands what their product is, or deliverable really is, for example? Which leads to a pertinent question. Why do you think many choose to define work as a series of processes? Really, as Lawton points out, all work should be considered as resulting in a product that can be measured. Sheed certainly feels that way because His strategic vision focuses on products, not processes. He doesn't talk about working a process and making sure that you understand what the process is. He's talking about the product, the end result of what you're going to do as part of your work. When you do look at work as this way, in terms of yielding products, not processes, you can begin to truly understand how to improve outcomes that positively affect customers, which, after all, is the point of this whole exercise, right? I mean, Lawton comes up with a novel comparison, I think in this case, between emails and thumbtacks. One of his clients is a fastener company, and they manufacture thumbtacks. He asks if we believe, all of us believe, that managers at that company take the time to count and measure the quantity, the unit cost, the defect rate, and the cycle time to produce a thumbtack. Well, of course they do, right? I mean, that's their job, right?
Sure.
I mean, but you think about it, it's a thumbtack, right? We could say, well, it's too much work to measure. We're doing millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of thumbtacks each day, right? Why,
Right.
each month, whatever. Why bother? Well, of course you're going to bother. That's the job, right? I mean, so why don't knowledge organizations do the same with, say, emails? Probably because in addition to the normal grousing about cost and the value of the exercise, it's because one is considered a product and the other is considered as a process. But they're both outputs that are the result of efforts that should ultimately yield customer value. Again, it's the point of the entire exercise. And I thought that was a really creative way to address this. You look at things like, we say, well, who counts emails? The amount of time you spend on email, the efficiency of email, and who calculates that in terms of a value chain, right? Value stream. Well, maybe we should. I mean, many times people will grouse, well, you can't measure that. Or it's not important. It's just a process, But no, it's really a product in many cases. The output of that, if you're a knowledge worker, is going to be an email that moves a process along, moves a product along. So maybe you should consider counting that, right? I mean, it's a really interesting aspect of this argument that Lawton presents here. Now, Robin Lawton is a really fine writer. I mean, I was very impressed with this. Again, 4,000 words, and his argument holds up really well throughout it. It adds a lot, in my opinion, to the utility of the ASQ Forbes white paper. So do yourself a favor. Take the time to read through both parts of this piece, and it's found in the story links again below the page right down there. And feel free to add your thoughts in the comments section. I think I always try to say that because, we talked about it on the piece that you just covered on Rip's piece, that, we had like 15 comments from readers about it. And to me, that really fosters a discussion and really adds value to what our platform is all about, to bring other experts in and comment on that. And from that synthesis, I think you get ultimately a really good perspective on where the ultimate value of a piece like this really lies. So I encourage everybody out there to read the piece and certainly comment on it too.
Yep. And by the way, if you want to comment, right below the right below any article, there's a little section that says comment. You have to be logged in order to comment, but you just log in, or if you're not a member of our site, just register. It's in the upper right corner, become a member of our site, and that allows you to comment on any article.
That's right.
Okay, our next story, I think, really is about communication.
That's right.
In his article, Essential Actions for Root Cause Analysis, Quality Digest columnist Matthew Barsalou asked the question, have you ever received a customer complaint with a blurry photo and a demand for immediate action, but insufficient detail to actually take that action? Barsalou makes 2 points in this piece. The first is that, particularly within the customer-supplier relationship, and we're not talking end user, we're talking
internal customers.
Internal
or
customers,
suppliers.
or suppliers, There's just as much responsibility on the customer to supply useful information on the nature of a problem as it is on the supplier to fix it.
I would say it's more. I mean, I would say the burden is more because that's ultimately the person who had where the damaged thing resides right now.
You need communication both ways. I mean, sending back a shipment of parts with a note that says they don't work is pretty much useless. I mean, why don't they work? Where don't they work? When don't they work? How don't they work? The more information you as a customer gives the supplier, the more quickly the problem can be resolved to everybody's satisfaction. Now the thing is, we all know what happens sometimes, particularly if you're ticked off. If something comes in and it's really messed up. I mean, there's this tendency, I think all of us have a little bit of this passive aggressive thing is, well, I'm just gonna send it back to them and tell them it doesn't work, and it's gonna be up to them to figure out why, right? And we all kind of resort to this. It's kind of like, okay, you've caused me pain, I'm gonna cause you pain. It doesn't work, you find out why. Right? I mean, I think that happens, unfortunately.
It does a lot.
I never do that. The second point Barsalou makes is that as a supplier, sometimes you have to diplomatically request that extra information for your customer if they haven't already supplied it to you. this can be tricky because sometimes the customer is ticked off, and now you need to go back and put more grief on their plate by making them do some more work to get you more information. So you may need this information, but I think the trick is that you communicate that you are working on the problem. We heard your problem, we see we got a problem, we're working on it. But in order to help us solve this problem, can you give us a little bit more information? Then you ask some questions, and you invite them to help you work with this problem that you are diligently trying to solve right now. What happens now if the supplier's root cause analysis into the problem points back to user error on the part of the customer? Sometimes customers just don't use your product correctly. Simply rejecting a customer's complaint, customer comes to you and they say, your part's broken, and you simply go back, well, we've tested it, it's not our fault.
Right.
We've had that happen. We've all had that happen, particularly in retail. It's like, that doesn't solve anything either. The customer thinks there's a problem. If they think there's a problem, you have a problem, even if the customer is wrong. And by the way, maybe the problem is that your documentation isn't clear enough. So all of this boils down to communication, and really it's up to the supplier to facilitate that communication. The customer has their duty. The customer should be communicating as a customer, you should do this because it's better for you if you do it. But if that doesn't happen, it's really up to the supplier to facilitate that communication. Remember, regardless of whether the fault lies with them or with you, the customer believes the fault lies with you, and they are probably not happy. So step one, communicate that you take the problem seriously and that you are working on it. That paves the way to ask more questions, if needed, to help solve the problem. And then, even if the problem isn't your problem, even if the problem is on them, it is your responsibility as a supplier to be a partner in helping them understand how they may have caused the problem, be understanding, and work with them to train them and be open to the idea that maybe even though it is a user issue, it might be a user problem caused by you, maybe through lack of good documentation.
Yeah, exactly right. It's a partnership, right? Yeah. I mean, we all want to get it right, and
we want to get it right. I mean, in the end, we all want the problem to be solved, right?
Of course.
The customer wants it solved, and you want it solved because you want a happy customer.
Yeah. And I think you're right. That first touch point where maybe there's some frustration on the customer's part, where you can choose to come back to meet the frustration, or you can immediately try to damp it down. That's really a key part of this right away. Is you have to right away communicate that you want to take care of it, you want to work together calmly, and you want to figure it out. That will generally, in most cases, make that customer, that partner of yours, work with you and be much more willing
And
to
I
do
think this works really well when you have a situation where it's customer error.
Yeah.
I think customers really appreciate. I know because I've had this happen to me. I've made mistakes.
Sure.
I mean, I've done things where it was customer errors, like, oh, I feel bad. But I've really appreciated when the suppliers come back to me, or the vendors come back to me and say, okay, well, I see you had a problem here. Yeah. Let's see where you went wrong.
Right.
Okay, and really helping me understand their product better. Mm-hmm. Number one, I don't feel as much of a doofus.
Right.
It's like now this person's sitting down walking me through it. It makes me feel better about myself. Mm-hmm. It also makes me feel better about them. It's like they didn't just say, oh, you're an idiot, read the manual. Yeah. It's like, well, no, let me step you through it. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way to cementing that relationship.
And being willing to. I mean, many times customer service people have to be willing to take the time and have to unspool the thing. And it takes a certain discipline to do that too without getting frustrated. Frustration can bring up on either side of the equation, so it's really important to do that. Yeah. Good point there, Matthew Barcelona. I always enjoy Matthew's writing.
Yeah.
Really good stuff from him. All right, well, we've come to the end of our half hour just about, but we're going to close the show with our tweet of the week. And this one offers an important life lesson from Twitter user Kim Starry, who tweets, and she's quoting Stephen Covey, most people struggle with life balance because they haven't paid the price to decide what's really important to them. Yeah. Hear. I think that's very, very true. Very true. Decide what's important. So thanks, Kim Starry, not to mention Stephen Covey, for that little reminder again about what is important. And speaking of reminders, don't forget, you can always find us on Twitter at where else? Quality Digest. That's where we're at on Twitter.
There you go. Well, that is our show for this week. Yep. Thank you for joining us. Hope you got some useful information out of that.
Yeah, we enjoyed that. Yep, so that's good stuff from us.
Fly the new biofuel planes.
That's right. That's right. You'll see. You'll smell the bacon in the French fries.
You'll smell the bacon in the French fries.
That's right. That's right. So we have another great week coming up for you next week. Our last full week of the year.
That's right. Next week will be our last show, and then we'll be gone
right.
until
after
something.
January 9th, I think. So we're going to have a little break there, but definitely come back and join us next week for a full week of QDD, and next Friday for QDL, and then we'll go on our break after that. So
All right.
have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you then.
And so long.
Bye.